Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video we will be starting thermodynamics. It's a chapter of class 11, very important, and this is basically introduction. Okay, so in this I will be talking about all the terms which are required to understand thermodynamics, right? The first term is system. Now how we define system is that part of universe, which is under observation, means suppose I am teaching. Now I am teaching here, I am writing, so this is your system. You are listening to what I am saying, and this is what I am writing, this is your system. We are carrying out some experiment in the lab. Suppose we have taken some salt in the test tube and we are heating it. So we should be observing what is happening to the salt, what is the color change, what are the gases evolved. That is a system. So whatever part of the universe is under observation, that is called as a system, right? And surrounding except system, rest everything is surrounding. Except system, rest everything is surrounding. Means when I am teaching what I am writing, this is your system. Other than this, everything is surrounding. Okay. So system plus surrounding put together, if we say system plus surrounding put together, that is called as universe. So universe is system plus surrounding. Now between system and surrounding there is a boundary. Between these two there is a boundary, right? This boundary, this I am writing here, between the system and the surrounding there is a boundary, and this boundary can either be rigid or it can be flexible. It can be rigid boundary or it can be moving. Or you can have this boundary can be real or it can be imaginary. Now, suppose you take some liquid in a container. You have taken some liquid in a container. This is the boundary. This boundary which is separating this liquid from the surrounding, this is said to be the real boundary. This is the real boundary. But when I am teaching, you are focusing over here. There is no boundary which is there between what we are seeing on the board and the remaining thing, the surrounding part. So there is no boundary. So that is said to be the imaginary boundary. So it can be either a real boundary like here, or it can be imaginary. It can be immovable, that is rigid, or it can be flexible. Or the third thing is the boundary can either be adiabatic. Adiabatic means there is no heat change. Taking place. Or it can be diathermic. Diathermic means this is suppose the system and this is the surrounding. Between them the heat change can occur. This can flow. Okay, so heat change can occur in this. It can pass through it. The heat can pass through it. That is, it can be exchanged between system and surrounding. This is diathermic. Okay, till here clear? So far what I told you, what is system? That part of the universe under observation. Other than system, remaining all the things, that is surrounding. System plus surrounding put together is universe. And between system and surrounding, there is boundary. Boundary can be of three different types: rigid or flexible. This is one category. Second category, rigid, real or imaginary. Third category, diathermic or adiabatic. Adiabatic means no heat change. That means the change in the heat is zero. In this case, it is there. The change is there, right? Now let's move on to the next part, that is types of system. There are three types of system. One is open system, It can be a closed system or isolated system. Open system is that which can exchange, it can exchange both mass and energy. It can exchange mass and energy with the surrounding. That system which can exchange both mass and energy with the surrounding, that is said to be the open system. Okay, let's take example. We have taken a container. There is some liquid in this. So there is a boundary, right? So this is a real boundary. A real boundary is separating the liquid from the surrounding. This is a real boundary. And the container, the volume, the container is able to transmit heat. Means the heat can flow from surrounding towards the system or from the system towards the surrounding. So we can say it is diathermic system. It is diathermic system, right? So it's not closed also, it's open. I mean, what all things are there, it can exchange. If you are heating it from outside, the heat can flow inside the system, and the whatever liquid is there, it can evaporate also. So mass can also exchange. So it can exchange energy, it can exchange both mass. It can exchange mass as well as energy with the surrounding. That is called as the open system. Now, actually speaking, this energy change can either be in terms of the heat or in terms of the work. Now, in the present example, there is heat exchange taking place between the system and the surrounding. That this is open system. Fine. Now, we'll move on to the closed system. It is that which cannot exchange mass, but it can exchange energy with the surrounding. It can exchange energy with the surrounding. Right? Suppose you take again a container. That is now a closed container. We have closed it. There is liquid here. This is the same thing, diathermic, and a real boundary is there. That part is the same like here, but it is now closed system. Now, when it is closed system, definitely mass it cannot exchange, right? But the wall is diathermic. Heat flow can occur from the system or from the surrounding. Yes, so what will happen? Energy exchange can occur, but mass exchange cannot occur. So it is a type of a closed system. So again, as I told you here, the energy can either be in terms of the heat flow or it can be work. So now in this only, there is sometimes, another question asked. Suppose you take a container where you have taken insulated wall. You have not taken here diathermic. It cannot allow, the heat to flow. And this is, fitted with a piston. It is fitted with a piston over here. There is a piston over here. Right? So, it is closed. Mass cannot be exchanged. Now, what about energy? Let's see. You are thinking that this is isolated. This is insulated container. Insulated container means it should not be able to exchange energy. But there is a piston. There is piston attached to it. Suppose there are some weights originally present here. Now you remove the weights. When you remove the weights, what will happen? The piston will go up. Piston will go up. So work has been done. Work has been done here. So it is exchanging energy in terms of work in this case. So if such a question is asked like, what type of system is this? It will be a closed system, not isolated system. Because it is able to exchange energy in terms of work, not in terms of the, heat. Isolated system. Isolated system is that which can neither exchange mass nor energy with the surrounding. It cannot exchange both. You can take a container now, which is having insulated walls. You take some liquid here. When it is insulated, that means mass, of course, first of all, it cannot go because it's closed, and it is insulated, so even energy cannot go. It cannot be exchanged with the surrounding because the wall which we have taken here is adiabatic wall. It's adiabatic, where the heat change cannot take place, exchange cannot occur between a system and the surrounding. Got it? Now, another term is state of system. State of system is defined as conditions of existence of a system. Conditions of existence of the system. Like for example, we have taken some gas in first condition where the pressure is P1, volume is V1, T1 is the temperature. So these are the conditions of existence of the first gas, this particular gas. Suppose you change the temperature, change the volume, and now the pressure is something different. So now the conditions of existence of that particular system is P2, V2 and T2. So these are the conditions of existence of the second state. Right. So what are the conditions of the existence of a particular system? That is said to be the state of a system. This is say the initial state, this is the final state. You can take another example, say I am having ice. So to have ice, what are the conditions required? That will be the state of a system. This is the first state. Suppose it is now converted to water in the liquid form. So what are the conditions of the existence of the system? This will be the next state of a system. This may be considered to be the initial state. This may be the final state. Right. There is another term, very, very important term, that is state function. State function, which is also referred to as state variable, state parameters. Okay, now what is a state function? State function is that property which is dependent on, it depends upon initial and final states only. It is dependent only on initial and final states, not on the path followed. It depends only on the initial and the final states, not on the path followed. Not on the path followed. Okay, such properties, what all properties are there included in this, which are only dependent on the initial and the final state, they are called as the state function. Now, in this chapter, we will be studying some properties. All the properties which we are going to study in this chapter, they are all state functions. Like you will have internal energy, E. E or U is the symbol. You have enthalpy, H. You have entropy, S. Gibbs energy, G. These all terms we are going to study in this chapter. Other than these properties, you can also have pressure, volume, temperature. These are all state functions. Right. Now, to understand that, suppose we are taking example of volume. Some volume of water is there in pond. And if suppose the change in volume of the water is there in the pond, irrespective of how the volume has increased, maybe by tube well or maybe by rain, or by both, we are only seeing the change in the volume. Okay, so because it is independent of the path followed, how it has been carried out, it is called as a state function, not dependent on the path followed. You carry out some change in temperature. Initial temperature is 25 degrees and the final temperature is at 35. How do you achieve that change in temperature? Irrespective of that. Okay, so the change in a particular thing depends only on initial and the final state. Then it will be called as a state function. It is not dependent upon the path followed. Right. Suppose we say a cyclic process. Suppose you have this position and from here we move and then we follow this particular path and again we come back to the original path. So what is happening? It's a cyclic process where the initial state and the final state is the same thing. Initial and the final state is same. So it's a cyclic process. So for a cyclic process, the change in any of these properties, suppose we say enthalpy or internal energy, that will be zero. Change in, suppose we are saying in terms of enthalpy, that also will be zero. Right? So if the initial and the final states are the same, the change will be zero. Now moving on to the another terms, extensive and intensive properties. Extensive properties are those which are dependent on the amount, dependent on amount of the substance, dependent on the amount of the substance. You can remember like that. Intensive properties are independent, extensive properties are dependent. Intensive will be independent. These are independent of amount of the substance. Amount of the substance. They are not dependent on the amount. They are said to be intensive. If they are dependent, it will be called as extensive properties. Right? For example, you can have mass, volume. You take little amount, you add some more to it, the property is increasing. If you add some more, volume is increasing. So mass, volume, they are, I'm sorry, it's the reverse thing I've written. Yeah, sorry, this should be not written here, this will be here. So extensive properties mein you'll have mass, which is you're adding, the mass is increasing. You add some more, volume is also increasing. So mass, volume. Then you have number of moles. Mass is increasing, number of mole is also increasing. Then even internal energy is increasing. Enthalpy will be increasing. Entropy will increase. Gibbs energy will increase. They are all increasing with the amount. You add the substance to it, these properties will increase. So they are dependent on the amount. They are said to be extensive property. Intensive property, they are independent. Now for example, you can have density. Now suppose you take this much iron piece. You find the density of this. You take small part of it and measure the density. Then also the property, the density of the iron rod will remain the same. It will not, reduce if you are reducing the, sub amount. Okay, so the density, you have refractive index. Refractive index is also independent. You have viscosity. Viscosity is independent. Then you have even concentration. All concentration terms, maybe molarity, maybe molality or mole fraction, these are all independent of the amount. For example, if you prepare some quantity of say 1 molar solution, and if you take half of it in the another container, even then it will be 1 molar. The concentration will not reduce to half. It is independent of the amount. That is called as intensive property. Okay, now one thing. We are saying entropy is extensive property. Sometimes you are given, what about molar entropy? Molar entropy. Anything in terms of molar when they are asking, it is understood. Molar entropy means entropy per mole they are asking. Entropy per mole they are asking. Okay, molar entropy will become then intensive. Okay, molar entropy, that will become an intensive property. This is very interesting here. Just see, extensive upon extensive, that is always intensive property. That is intensive, right? That means the ratio of two extensive properties is an intensive property. Ratio of two extensive property is a intensive. Entropy was extensive property. Number of moles was also extensive, but the ratio becomes intensive property. This is one example I've given you. Molar entropy is an intensive property. Another example you can take, you can have concentration. Even this concentration, say molarity we are writing. Molarity is number of moles by volume. Number of moles, even volume we wrote here, number of moles we wrote, both are extensive, but their ratio, number of moles by volume, that is molarity, this becomes intensive. This is extensive, number of mole is extensive, volume is extensive, but the molarity is intensive. Likewise, you can take one more example, density. Density is mass by volume. Mass is extensive, volume is extensive, but the density is intensive. Got it? Now, next we are doing is thermodynamic processes. There are mainly 4 types of thermodynamic processes we will come across. Isothermal. Iso means same. Thermal temperature. So those processes which are carried out at constant temperature, they are called as isothermal processes. Isobaric. Processes which are carried out at constant pressure. If they are carried out at constant volume, they are called as isochoric. Adiabatic processes are those which are carried out at constant heat. That means there is no heat change taking place in them. Right? So these processes, isothermal processes, are those where there is no change in temperature. The change in temperature is 0. We can say no change in temperature means no change in internal energy. No change in the kinetic energy, because kinetic energy is directly proportional to temperature. So if we plot a graph for this, we'll get like this. Suppose I'm just plotting a graph in one itself where I'll be showing for all the processes. Suppose you have this side volume and here pressure. So if a graph is plotted between pressure and volume at constant temperature, it will be like this. It will be a hyperbola. Right? Now, suppose we are plotting a graph for this one, for the next one, that is at constant pressure. Right? So, constant pressure means this should not be changing. Right? This should not be changing. So, this should not be changing means you will have a graph like this. This will be, we can write here, this is for isothermal. The graph which I have drawn, the first one is isothermal. This one is for isobaric. Pressure is constant. If it is for isochoric, volume should not be changing. So you can have like this. This is the graph for, this one is for the isochoric. Right? Volume is not changing for that. Last one I'll draw with the other color. Adiabatic. Adiabatic means no heat change taking place. Right? There is a difference between isothermal and adiabatic graph. You'll always find this one is having more slope. Right? So it will be like this. It will be below. Not exactly I've drawn, but always whenever you have 2 lines like this, the lower one will be for adiabatic. This is for adiabatic. Okay? So I hope you have followed whatever we have done in this video. Please practice it. In the upcoming videos, we'll be discussing the remaining topics of thermodynamics. Thank you for watching.